The first human ship did not arrive with banners, warnings, or diplomatic codes. It arrived already burning. The alien sensor crews noticed it only because it was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Its trajectory cut across established hyperspace lanes at an angle no sane navigator would choose. Its thermal signature flared and dipped erratically, as if its reactors were coughing themselves to death. Fractured hull plates reflected starlight in broken shards, and the ship's silhouette refused to resolve into any known classification. It was asymmetrical, scarred, and heavy in a way that suggested violence had been its natural environment long before this moment. At first, the Velthari Border Command assumed it was debris, a drifting carcass from some forgotten skirmish, finally wandering into monitored space. Then it corrected course. That was the first warning, though no one understood it yet. The ship adjusted its vector by less than half a degree, a tiny change that cost it fuel it clearly could not afford. That adjustment brought it directly toward Velthari-controlled space, not toward a trade hub or a safe harbor, but toward a fortified exclusion zone, layered with automated defense platforms, a place where ships went only if they were prepared to die. The Velthari commanders reacted with practiced boredom. Unknown vessels entered their borders weekly. Most fled after the first warning pulse. The rest were erased. A standard challenge was transmitted, translated into 27 known languages and 3 mathematical constructs. There was no reply. A second challenge followed, sharper in tone, backed by targeting locks that brushed the human ship's hull like a predator's whiskers. Still nothing. Only then did the Velthari notice something that made the command chamber grow quiet. The ship was venting atmosphere, not explosively, not catastrophically, deliberately. Controlled plumes jetted from ruptured sections of the hull, shimmering like ghostly breath in the void. Whoever was aboard was bleeding air on purpose, dumping mass, lightening the vessel as if squeezing the last possible speed out of a body that had already been pushed far beyond its limits. No species did that. The Velthari physiology could not survive depressurization for more than seconds. Most known species were worse. Even combat-hardened races sealed breaches immediately, or abandoned ship. You did not vent your own air unless you had already accepted something worse than death. Weapon platforms powered up. Then the human ship transmitted. The signal was crude, narrowband, and shockingly old-fashioned. It carried no encryption watermark, no galactic identification codes, just a raw audio channel, distorted by radiation and distance. When it played in the command chamber, the translators hesitated, then struggled, then finally produced something approximating meaning. "This is the indomitable resolve," the voice said. It was hoarse, strained, unmistakably alive. "Human vessel, we are damaged, we are pursued, we are not requesting asylum." A pause followed, filled with background noise, alarms, metal groaning, shouted orders barely held back from panic. "We are warning you," the voice continued. "Clear your fleets, power down your guns, or stand where you are and learn what desperation looks like." The Velthari command erupted in soundless disbelief. No ship spoke like that. No captain addressed a sovereign military power with a warning delivered like a threat and a promise braided together. Before any response could be formulated, the human ship crossed the exclusion boundary. Defense platforms fired. The opening salvo was not designed to destroy. It was a disabling pattern, elegant and efficient, slicing toward the human vessel's engines and control surfaces. The kind of fire that left survivors alive long enough to understand their mistake. The indomitable resolve did not evade. It absorbed the hits head-on. Energy flared across its hull, splashing against improvised ablative plating welded over older scars. Sections of the ship simply ceased to exist. Torn away in incandescent silence, the vessel lurched, spun, then stabilized again, still coming forward. The Velthari gunners adjusted, increasing yield. That was when the human ship fired back. No energy lances, no precision beams. Instead, its forward hull split open like a wound, revealing a battery of mass drivers so oversized they bordered on obscene. They launched solid projectiles, unguided, unrefined, each one a slab of dense alloy accelerated to a meaningful fraction of light speed. The first platform vanished. Not exploded, not shattered, simply ceased. Its matter converted into a brief, violent flash that overloaded nearby sensors and blinded half the defensive grid. The second platform tried to retreat. The third attempted to raise shields. Neither survived. Veltari doctrine emphasized efficiency, elegance, conservation. The human weaponry embodied none of those things. It was brute force distilled into physics. No finesse. Just overwhelming momentum and the absolute certainty that something in front of it was going to stop existing. The indomitable resolve tore through the exclusion zone like a wounded predator too angry to die. Only after it passed did the Velthari realize something worse. The ship was not fleeing from Velthari space. It was leading something into it. Long-range sensors lit up with contacts, dozens at first, then hundreds. Then so many that the tactical displays began collapsing them into threat clouds rather than individual signatures. The pursuing fleet belonged to the Car Dominion, an empire old enough to remember when stars were still being claimed by right of survival rather than treaty, a species that had built its culture around conquest so thoroughly that peace had become a foreign concept. They were larger than the Velthari, stronger and far less restrained, and they were angry. The car fleet emerged from hyperspace in a formation optimized for annihilation. War carriers bristling with launch bays, siege vessels whose sole purpose was to crack planetary crusts. At their center moved something vast and deliberate, a command ship that bent sensor readings around itself through sheer mass and power. The Veltari command chamber went silent. This was not a border incident. This was an invasion vector. The human ship broadcast again. "Weaker now, told you," the voice said. "They don't stop." The car did not bother with warnings. They fired through Velthari space as if it already belonged to them. Defense fleets scrambled. Emergency alliances were invoked. Messages screamed across diplomatic channels. None of it mattered. The car advance rolled forward, like a tide of sharpened metal, and the Velthari forces, for all their sophistication, began to fold under the pressure. Amid the chaos, the indomitable resolve did something no one expected. It turned around. With engines already failing, hull breached and life support systems screaming, the human ship pivoted to face the oncoming car armada. It positioned itself directly between the invading fleet and the Velthari core worlds. The human voice returned, quieter now, steadier. "We tried to run," it said. "Didn't work, so this is where we make our stand." No rallying cry, no heroic declaration, just a statement of fact, delivered by someone who had already accepted the cost. The car command ship targeted the human vessel, recognizing it for what it was, defiance made physical. They unleashed everything. The void between fleets became a storm of fire and radiation. The indomitable resolve vanished behind layers of explosions so dense they distorted space itself. Velthari sensors lost track of the ship entirely. For several seconds, it appeared that the human vessel had finally been erased. Then something came out of the fire. What remained of the indomitable resolve was barely a ship, more like a skeleton wrapped in flame. Entire sections were gone, exposing internal decks to vacuum, and yet it continued to fire its mass drivers, hammering at the car advance, forcing even their monstrous vessels to adjust course or die. The human ship was not winning, but it was buying time. Every second it survived was a second the Velthari used to evacuate civilians, to reposition fleets, to understand what kind of war had just been delivered to their borders. Inside the indomitable resolve, humanity showed its true nature. Crew members worked in vacuum suits amid wreckage and fire. They bypassed safeties, rerouted power through systems never meant to carry it, physically braced failing components with their own bodies to keep them aligned long enough to fire one more shot. When the engines finally failed completely, the captain did not order retreat, he ordered collision. The human ship locked onto the car command vessel and dumped everything into forward momentum. No shields, no evasive maneuvers. just raw thrust, pushing a dying hull toward the heart of the enemy. The last transmission cut through every channel, every species language layered on top of the human voice. "Humanity does not stop," the captain said. "We break." The indomitable resolve struck the car command ship at relativistic speed. What followed was not an explosion. It was an event. Sensors across 3 systems recorded it. A moment where mass, velocity, and will combined into something that rewrote local physics. The car command vessel cracked, then folded, then collapsed inward as its core destabilized. The shockwave ripped through the surrounding fleet, shattering formations, tearing ships apart, killing thousands in the blink of an eye. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The car advance faltered. For the first time in recorded history, a car fleet hesitated. That hesitation was all the galaxy needed. Reinforcements arrived. Allies who had never stood together before formed lines shoulder to shoulder. And at the center of every tactical calculation, every revised doctrine, every future plan, was the same conclusion. If one broken human ship could do that while dying, what could a prepared humanity do while alive? The war that followed reshaped the stars, and every species learned the same lesson the Velthari learned that day, watching a single human vessel choose annihilation over surrender. Humans do not ask permission to endure. They endure first, and then they make sure no one ever forgets what it cost to push them there.